Did you know that the Earth has 2 layers of radiation surrounding the planet? That if a human body passed through these belts, they're called the Van Allen belts, there's an inner one and an outer one, it would destroy the human body with radiation. Okay? These Van Allen belts are between Earth and the moon. You must pass through these layers of radiation in order to completely leave Earth and get beyond any sort of gravitational, magnetic, any sort of earthly fields, which these are. To get past them, you must, if you want to get to the moon, to Mars, anywhere else. Well, it begs the question of, okay, well, radiation, we are just now even beginning to discover now what the effects are on the body, right? We've used it for cancer treatments and all sorts of things. But when you look at history, and the first time we went to the moon, 1969. Now, the device that I'm using to communicate with you and the device that you're using to watch me has more technology than the space shuttle that went to the moon in 1969, okay? It has been 50 years since then. What kind of advancements have we had? We have not been able to go to the moon as regularly as we really should have been. If we were really truly successful about making it to the moon, then we would have been making more moon trips and we would have long been to all sorts of other places by now in 50 years. Well, let's take a look at something else. The Van Allen belts were discovered in 1958, okay? So it was 11 years between the discovery of these radiation belts and when the first space shuttle left the atmosphere. And if you go do some research now about what we know about these layers of radiation and how they affect the human body, what it says is that the human body is able to take very low levels of radiation and be okay. Like we get, a CAT scan or something, and there's low levels of radiation or x-rays and whatnot, right? All of our intricate type of scans, right? They use low levels of radiation. Well, how would they know that back in 1969? It had only been 11 years since they discovered it. There were lots of things happening at that time that we now know were not the right things, right? Like diet soda. We now know that it causes cancer. We also know that cigarettes cause cancer, and we also know that alcohol is not good for you. We also know just so many other things. Look at the technology in plastic surgery, what we're able to do to the human body that we couldn't even do 20 years ago. Plastic surgery that was done, breast implants and things like that, women were having major problems with them and dying because they were popping or creating sepsis within the body. And these were sold to us as safe, okay? All I'm saying is that something does not add up. And it doesn't... How could they gain this knowledge of radiation and within 11 years successfully, or they told us it was a successful launch, within 11 years to get past this radiation that we had no idea about at all? But somehow they knew, and the space shuttle was able to make it, and those people didn't die of radiation, even though at the time they didn't really realize exactly how much radiation was there because the instruments weren't nearly as precise. They could only pick up as much as they could pick up, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of experimentation to find like the proper degree so that you don't kill humans. And the only way that you would know is to do it, right? And then make adjustments from there, or have some sort of simulation. But the chances of it succeeding at that point in time in 1969, just to give you an idea, like a computer took up like an entire living room, one computer, okay? Like, you really need to understand the gravity of this entire situation, ironically, to understand the non-gravity. It's just very peculiar, don't you think? You know? And I'm sure that you could find all sorts of articles that will, try to like explain this all away. I did. I found lots of articles, and what they said was just that, is that yes, the radiation can totally kill a human, but we found little spots in there where it's not nearly as thick, where it's less than, and then we go through that and we go in at an angle, so that way there's less exposure to it. And I don't know, like, it just doesn't make any sense. If you are going through a field of something, right? The shortest point is A to B. If you need to go through a field, you have to go straight down, right? If I'm trying to get down to this line, like down here, it's easier for me to go here than for me to go at an angle. It's going to take me longer to get down, essentially because I'm taking a longer path. Or maybe it could even be the same path, right? So let's just even say that it's like a 45-degree angle and it's the same path. Like, there just isn't any way to reduce your exposure to that radiation belt. It's so thick. So you can't go at it straight through, right? Laws of physics prevent that. You know, the science out there says the atmosphere is too thick. If you try to come straight on, it's like, falling off the top of a building and hitting the concrete. It's that impenetrable. But if you come at an angle, you're okay because you're, right. Well, we know that. I mean, earth physics, it happens the same way too. You're trying to drop into water. It's easier if you come at an angle. It hurts less depending on how far you have to go. Physics, right? There's lots of physics stuff involved. But you're not reducing the amount of time that you're spending in the atmosphere if it's this far and you're going at an angle. That's the minimum amount of time that you would spend in there. So, okay, that's assuming that the whole field is the same strength. And this is where it gets confusing, because the field, let me give you a visual. All right, so this is the Earth. There's an inner field that goes like this. Watch my fingers, an inner field like that. And then there's an outer field that's like this, and it comes into the points, right? And so they're saying that it's somewhere along the magnetic poles of the planet. North Pole, South Pole, right? And so the energy is coming in these poles like this. But they're saying that the energy only comes into the Earth, that there's no recirculation, which is weird because energy has to go somewhere. Like, is it just like pulling in? But where is it being generated from? It would have to go out to come in, right? Like, that's physics, equal opposite reaction. Just all this stuff. It's just not making any sense to me. So maybe you can help me out here. So we've got this magnetic pole, the Van Allen belt, the inner one. We have the outer Van Allen belt that goes around this, and we've got to make it through both of those in a certain period of time so that we don't get radiation exposure, okay? Now, obviously, I'm not a rocket scientist. I am a human scientist in the fact that everything that I do in my life is, works with science. It's the fundamentals, and we, as non-scientists with no letters behind our names in that regard, should still be able to have a basic understanding of how this stuff works, okay? Because if we can't have a basic understanding, then how do we know if it's really true and we aren't just being buffaloed by these people who are smarter than us? And are they really smarter, or did they just learn more about one particular subject from other people who know about that particular subject? How much did they really know from experience, and how much are they just regurgitating? Okay, so I'm all about experience. Give me all of your tools. Let's check it out. Let's see if it works, because that's the whole point of science, right? I should be able to recreate any experiment that any scientist does, given that I have the proper amount of tools, right? Yes, even my child knows that. We need to be able to recreate these things. So our Earth has these 2 layers of belts. And somehow in 1969, when we had less technology than the devices that we're using right now, somehow we were able to pass these Van Allen belts without losing a single person and then make it back. And like, not even to mention like what happened after that. Neil Armstrong just kind of like dropped off the face of the planet. He gave his own little you know, interview afterwards, but he didn't even really have a whole bunch to say. You know, it's really, really crazy when you start looking at all the pieces, but forget all of that. Let's just come back to the science of this. This Van Allen belt comes through here, and somehow in 1969 they had the technology to get through this Van Allen belt only 11 years after discovering that it existed, with less technology than the TI-83 calculator that I used in high school. Okay? You understand that? I graduated in 2001, by the way. So my calculator 20 years ago had more technology than the space shuttle that made it to the moon in 1969, and somehow they made it through all these layers of radiation and made it back without any consequences. Well, there's 2 possibilities, okay? And they both involve, well, the first one is that they just didn't tell us everything that's going on, and we did actually make it there, but something is happening that they didn't actually tell us. They're leaving some part out. And then the other aspect is that we didn't actually ever go there at all, and that it was just a whole big fabrication, right? Like even the science doesn't support that being possible, right? Unless, as my child here told me about the first option, about we did make it, but there's something missing. What did you say?
That Neil Armstrong's an alien, because if you look at his
He's
name,
a what? Neil Armstrong is an alien?
Yeah, because if you switch around his first name, it's Lean, and then you add his first letter from his last name, it'd be Alien.
Oh, you mean if you reversed his name and you Neil A and you reversed it and it spells alien? Quite the coincidence. Well, I don't know. All I'm saying is that something is really, really fishy. And this science itself just doesn't even add up. Okay? So, investigate for yourself. Never take anything at face value. And when you find holes in the story, there's a reason for that. I hope that you enjoyed my little trip down the rabbit hole, space rabbit hole. If you did, definitely share this and give me your insight. What do you think happened in 1969? Do you think we actually made it to the moon? Because I'm kind of thinking that maybe this Mars landing might be along the same lines as the moon landing. What do you think?